Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Accessibility Talks, or Alley Talks, if you will, a monthly virtual meetup where we chat about digital accessibility, inclusivity, and usability. Each month, we invite a speaker to present a topic, and afterwards, we invite the community, that's you, to ask questions or participate in the discussion. My name is Mark Casillas. I'm your host today. I work at Canopy Studios as a technical lead. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the winds are kicking up and I use the pronouns of he and him. Um, oh, I did the wrong thing. Sorry. There we go. I learned how to use PowerPoint today. Anyway, before we get too far in the talk, I want to let you know that we have live transcripts available at bit.ly Alley Talks April or ATR 2024. There's a QR on your screen right now if you want to do it. That's a little easier. If you look for the link in the chat, you can also enable YouTube closed captions if that works better for you. I do want to take a moment to remind everybody our group seeks to provide a friendly and safe environment. We require all participants to adhere to the Accessibility Talks Code of Conduct. This includes speakers, hosts, and those watching on YouTube and people commenting interacting in the social networks. It applies to everybody in all events and anything doing with Alley Talks. Code of conduct can be found at our website at alleytalks.com/conduct. All participants should be able to engage in productive dialogue and should share and learn with each other in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Huge shout out to our to Agile Collective for becoming a bronze sponsor of Alley Talks. We really appreciate your support. If you would like to become a sponsor and have your name on that slide previously, head on over to alleytalks.com/sponsorships, and you can learn more about our budgeting priorities and goals and how your organization can support. I also want to shout out to our Alley Cat Club members. These are monthly contributors. Thank you very much for your financial contributions. I do want to also wish everybody a happy April Sides Month for those who celebrate, because it's April. Yeah, just saying. If you'd like to see your name on the list, again, visit the sponsorship page at alleytalks.com and you can get more detail on what we use that money for. So that's alleytalks.com/sponsorship. If you got questions, we love the questions. At the end of the presentation, we are going to take some time for Q&A. You can either put a comment in YouTube right there. It's over there. Yeah, over there. Or you can go ahead and use the hashtag AlleyTalks. That's A11YTALKS on Mastodon or Twitter. So if you could, in the YouTube chat, put a little Q at the beginning of it, because that way it's easier for us to find, and that would be really, really neat. So today, who are we talking to? We're talking to Erin Evans, lead accessibility strategist at Oracle Health. She's coming out of the Florida area, where it's nice and warm. And fun fact about her, she likes otters.
I do. Otters are amazing.
Do they have otters in Florida?
They do, yes. North American river otters. I have yet to see them personally myself in the 10 years that I've lived here in the wild, but I actually had a colleague who lived on a canal, and he would often talk to me about, oh yeah, I look out back and I can see the otters. And I'm like, well, that's great. So that's one of my goals while I live here.
All right, we're on a search for the otters.
Yes.
However, today you're going to present on personalized to prioritize strategies to grow your accessibility program. Go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. So thank you all, and thank you to the Alley Talks team for inviting me to be here and chat with you guys. So I will be flipping back and forth between some slides, but here we go. Hi, look, I'm really the same person that you see on screen, except today I'm wearing my computer glasses because of my old lady eyes. As Marky said, I am an experienced accessibility consultant, product manager, program manager, and accessibility strategist. I do hold a certification of professional and accessibility core competencies from the IAAP. and I almost passed the Web Accessibility Specialist exam 2 years ago. I wrote a nice LinkedIn blog post about that, about, I didn't get the certification the first time. I haven't decided to take it again, but, I learned so much in that process. So if you are thinking about learning more of those things, all power to you. There is a link here to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're not able to go through that link, you can just search for me on LinkedIn. I am in the ALI Talks and accessibility community, so hopefully I will see you along the way. So why are we here today? I want to talk to you guys about ways to grow your accessibility program, gain buy-in, and how to personalize the conversations around accessibility to do that. The focus is on the accessibility profession and how we can intentionally include empathy in our conversations to help foster that mindset shift, because people may not know what they don't know. And once they know it, they might be more interested in working through it. It's really often hard to do, especially in a business setting. Depends on the size of your company and the knowledge base, but what are ways we can make some inroads? Today's conversation is specific to digital accessibility. And as a disclaimer, I am not representing my current or past companies during this presentation. I am sharing with you my own personal experiences and how they have supported the growth of accessibility practices from what I have seen. So we did talk about my fun fact being that I like otters. And some of you are probably like, why is that a fun fact? Because one, otters are amazing. But let me explain to you why I like otters. When I was 6 or 7, in the mid-1980s, we came to Orlando and we went to SeaWorld. And we went to one of the marine life shows. And I remember during that show, they had trained some of the otters to do little tasks in this fun little skit. And I thought it was the cutest thing ever. Couple that with, while I was still in my young 7-8-year-old age, I was watching a great show that used to be on the Disney Channel called Danger Bay, which took place in the Pacific Northwest. I think they were in Vancouver. And among all of the beautiful scenery, this family had a pet otter. And the otter was always around and they lived on the water, so the otter would go in the water. And it was just the most fun, exciting thing. And I thought, how fun are these animals, right? They're playful, they're smart, like all of this great stuff. And ever since then, I've just really wanted to learn more about them. And I they're fun. At the end of the day, to me, they're fun. We were having a conversation earlier, and I like to think about Hermione from Harry Potter. When she would do a Patronus, her Patronus was the otter, specifically a sea otter. And I'm like, I think sea otters would be my Patronus as well. What does this have to do with accessibility? Why do you guys care? I'm telling you this story about otters because I want you to understand why I like them. I'm giving you that background information so that you might be more interested to go and find out more information about otters. If I had started talking to you about the different breeds of otters and where are they found and, which are the most population and all of the statistics around otters and just came in with that, chances are I would have lost you guys. But by connecting with you as a personal story about my cute little self and why I like these fun, amazing animals, you might now be more intrigued to go learn more about otters. If not, I won't hold it against you. The same principle holds true with accessibility. You always want to try to connect your stories to that personal connection of humans to help others understand what they don't know. The more we can do this, the more we can show small incremental things, the bigger changes we will be able to make and have a bigger impact within our accessibility communities. On the screen here, I have the agenda slide. So we're going to go through a couple of ways that we can use these strategies. One is understand the audience, keep it simple, make it personal, and then lead with empathy. Once I've gone through all of the slides, we'll open it up to questions, as Marky had said earlier. So understand the audience. All right, throughout this presentation, there are cute otters on the slides. So this particular otter or slide has a picture of a sea otter floating in the water and kind of looking at the camera with its cute fuzzy face. The slide says, who are you talking to? Understanding your audience is the most important thing you can do at the beginning, because who you're talking to is going to drive that approach you take to your conversation. You know, once you know who you're talking to, you'll have an idea of how to shape your goal. It's also important with that audience, how much time do you have? If it's a presentation to executives, you probably don't have a lot of time to get your point across. If it's a presentation to colleagues, you may have more time. So truly understanding where you're at will help you focus your conversation. And another really important thing to consider is, what does this audience know about accessibility? So we're all here today because we are accessibility professionals. We are people within the accessibility community or wanting to learn more about accessibility. So we could talk standards, we could talk usability, we could talk all sorts of fun things. That may not be the case when you're trying to build your accessibility program, trying to gain more buy-in for more resources or more time. So, you know, a big challenge when you're trying to establish those conversations and grow your program is, as I mentioned earlier, finding ways to shift that mindset to help people understand the importance of accessibility and how to implement it into, you know, everyday work. So let's think about the different audiences you may have, right? So at a business level, if you're talking to executives or people who make decisions on programs, things that are typically important to businesses are the return on investment, market share, client satisfaction, product quality, those types of key measurable metrics. So when you're going into a conversation where you're talking to business leaders, how can you connect those business goals to make it personal? So one thing is, start those conversations with a human connection. I like to start them with something small on an everyday thing that may not have crossed their mind as being something related to accessibility. I know many of us in the accessibility community often talk about the curb cuts at the end of a sidewalk, where the sidewalk dips down, and typically you might have the little bumps leading up to the edge of the curb, which is twofold for knowing that the surface is changing, but it also allows for a wheelchair user to be able to safely get across the sidewalk or to the other side. That's one piece that people may not even have considered as something within accessibility. Another one that might relate in a different situation is related to sports, right? Talk about football. Huddles, football players do a huddle before a play so they can talk to each other. That is a thing that originated from Gallaudet University, from their football teams, because they did not want the other team stealing their signs of what their play was going to be. So they would huddle together, use sign language to share what their play was going to be. And that is how a football huddle became a thing. Oftentimes I get conversations around keyboard users. And my team, my users aren't keyboard users. It's not something that they do. They like to click through, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Put it to them. Do you use a keyboard? Do you use Control X or Command X, Control C, Command C? Do you use those on a regular basis? My guess is most people at some point who are able to use a keyboard have used those keyboard shortcuts to quickly copy, paste, move things around. They may not be thinking of themselves as a keyboard user in that moment because they don't always rely on a keyboard, but their ability to use those keyboard shortcuts is the same principle that you can expand on when you're talking about how keyboard use and keyboard navigation is really important to a product. One of the things that I think is really important is when you're talking about these conversations, when you've started opening it and making these connections, is then related to the product or program you're talking about, right? So our products do this, and this is how we can get more business. But if our products can't be accessed by users of a keyboard who want to be able to go from start to finish, or people who rely on a screen reader because everything is not coded correctly, then we will lose business, right? So by connecting these personal stories of keyboard is really important, and if a keyboard user can't get all the way through our workflow, it pulls those pieces together for people who may not be as versed in accessibility. Totally different on the Who Are You Talking To? I once gave a presentation to a group of third grade students who were finishing their school year during COVID. So they had been virtual students all year. And I talked to them about accessibility. And I did it using closed captions in a video. And the first time I had them all talk at the same time without captions on, and then we turned the captions on. And I explained to them through what they've learned that those captions help them understand the content, because when they were all talking, they couldn't hear what was happening, but some of them were then able to extrapolate the information from that video because they were able to read those captions. Do they remember that? I have no idea. But at the time, it really connected with them and they thought it was really interesting. And, for 5 minutes of the end of their school year, they were happy to have somebody else to talk to. At least I think they were happy to have somebody else to talk to. The next strategy is keep it simple. Talk to me like I'm a kid. The image on this slide is a group of baby otters in a den, and there's some straw underneath them, and they're a light gray color, and they're super adorable, all being cute little baby otters. The reason I like to use this as talk to me like I'm a kid is simple language, simple explanations will have more power in your conversation. The first bullet point here is talk intentionally. So I was having a conversation with my college-aged niece the other day, and she was telling me a story about how she had to listen to an audiobook at 1.5 speed because the narrator was slow and she was losing interest. And as this conversation went on, my niece got more engaged and just kept talking really, 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 really fast. And I was like, hey, hold up. You are talking at 1.5 speed. That passion that we have around all things accessibility can energize us, but it's also important to make sure we kind of rein that in our conversations so that people can hear what we're saying without having to stop and listen. What are you saying? You're going so fast, I can't keep up with you. The second bullet point here is use plain language. Sometimes using big, superfluous words just because you can does not mean you should. There are a lot of big terms in the business world, in accessibility, that can be broken down. I have had experiences where when you're using big words, not explaining what they mean, not relating them to everyday items, it makes it really hard for people to understand your message, right? So let's think about, why are you going to tell me about making a creamed nut butter and seasonal fruit compote spread on an artisan 9-grain bread when you could just say, I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Keeping it simple will get your message across. Keeping your graphics clean and clear, make sure that you're not overloading what imaging you might have in your presentation. If you need to break up your images in same data set, but maybe break it up on 2 or 3 different images so that you're not overloading the information at once, that is another way to simplify but still get your point across with your data. The fourth bullet here is use an if-then approach. When you're talking through your data, if you can present if this happens, then this is going to happen, your actions and consequences. That's a skill that we learn at a relatively young age in decision making, right? So if as a company we choose not to invest in accessibility for this product, then we risk losing this amount of market share, right? If we remove these accessibility barriers, if we make it so that our keyboard navigation is working on all of our products, then we are improving the usability of our product by this percent, and more people can use our product effectively. So giving them that if-then statement and using that data will help make those conversations a little easier. The last bullet point up here is avoiding decision fatigue. Come in with challenges and recommendations when you're having those conversations. I know that at the end of the day, I'm exhausted from all of the different conversations and decisions that have to be made. And I'm sure, top level executives feel that very much. So if you can come into those conversations with your data, lead with the recommendation that you think is best based on your knowledge and experience, and you're supporting that data with explaining how it can reach the most people and do the most good, you're giving them the solution and basically saying, do you agree, instead of, hey, can you help me come up with this solution? So the last item on here as a fun fact is a lot of these same principles apply to accessibility best practices, right? Keeping it simple, talking intentionally, using plain language, ways that you can get your message across without overloading the conversation. Make it personal. Start with stories, not statistics. When we started this talk, I was telling you guys about otters, and oh wait, there's a picture of an otter here. And this picture on the screen is an otter who is wrapped in kelp, and in the background are a couple more otters also with kelp. And he's got two paws, or they have two paws up out of the water. And we could come up with all sorts of stories. This is really just decorative. When you're starting your conversations, connect your business requirement to something personal. Think about when you are trying to get traction for making improvements on an old product, or even making improvements to a new product, right? Maybe you've had clients come in and say, this is not working for me. And instead of just going forward and saying, hey, this doesn't work, maybe you can flip the conversation and say, can you go through this workflow with only using your keyboard? Let the people you're talking to try that. And if they get stuck, then they understand what happens for the users who are asking for a fix. You're not trying to trap anybody. You're not trying to make fun of anybody. You're just trying to show them why this information is important to helping fix something, right? When you're going through with your keyboard exercise, one thing I don't recommend doing is jumping in with all of the standards and their meanings. That's not your goal. Your goal is to get people to understand why this is important. It may be your goal during an engineering team meeting, or with your UX team or other teams who are building that product, to explain how to implement and why it's important. But when you're having conversations, especially with upper leadership, making those connections to the business requirement using your products will help bring that together, right? Your goal is to teach them through what they're building and what they're responsible for, how to help make accessibility a priority. Another thing you should do is use your experiences to connect to the goals. You're the expert. You're the one who understands accessibility in and out. So how can you take that, put it together in a meaningful way to show and tell and get that buy-in, right? So we've talked through a couple of different ways you can do that, and your experience matters. Another thing is personalizing the data. Make your emphasis on the data. A lot of businesses make decisions based on data. and think through, who are you building this product for? What is the end goal and how can we improve it? I used to work in ed tech, and I supported a lot of different companies who built digital educational materials for students across the K-20 and higher ed environment. There was a student that went to my son's elementary school, and he communicated with an iPad. I never personally met this student, but he always had an iPad. He had an adult with him, but he would literally push the buttons on his iPad while he was having conversations. And I often thought to myself, while we're developing a product, how can we work through this product to make it usable and meaningful for that student, right? Like, I would have this student in my mind while we're having these conversations, and making sure that I think these students are, what's the data of students who might have the requirement of using AT, right? In the elementary schools, you might have that data, you might not, but what can you do with that to help prioritize that work and make sure that your leaders, your teams, your colleagues, can connect to why you're going through all of this with your work. For those of you who have heard Lainey Feingold, who is a lawyer within the accessibility community, she often uses the phrase, be a dolphin, not a shark. And her conversation around that is dolphins are typically seen as very friendly and happy and, much more approachable in a situation than probably a great white shark coming at you with its teeth bared. I'm going to play off of that and say, be an otter, right? Be fun, be playful. You can be feisty, it's okay, but you're approaching things from a perspective that people may not think about, and you aren't there to ruin anything. You are there to make it better, because that's what otters do, right? Otters make everything better because they're amazing. The last point I want to talk about is leading with empathy. Everyone's opinions matter, and everyone has the right to be heard. So the image on the screen are 4 otters. These look like they're North American river otters, and they are on a green grass, and they're looking off the camera. There's a quote on the screen here. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. So the first bullet point might be a very sad thing to hear, but accessibility is not everyone's top priority. I know, right? Crazy. We've seen a lot of recent presentations. I know AxCon has had some good ones about a common thread being connecting to empathy. Your goal is to figure out what is important to your leaders and find a common bond. What is your company trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve in your conversations, right? They might have a different focus on, perhaps it's time and priorities, because there's always a lot of priorities going on, right? So their feelings matter, their goals matter just as much as yours. So make sure you're listening to figure out what the issue is and how you can take the accessibility work that you're trying to push forward and build it into there in a harmonious way, instead of, kind of going in with that shark-like attitude. Every person's lived experience is unique, right? We're all humans. We all have similarities but differences, and there's always a common thread. So what common thread can you connect with on the people you're talking to build a conversation to help you support your conversation on accessibility? A lot of us might have aging parents who really want to do things by themselves because they are independent, but we see that they struggle with technologies, right? So when you're thinking about, if you're building a consumer product, what are ways you can work to make that experience a little simpler to people who aren't as adept at working through technologies? And when you're having those conversations, don't just relate it necessarily to a random persona, but maybe talk through, like, hey, did your parents experience this? Did your brother or sister have this problem? if you can make it personal in that way, it will help you to move forward with the people you're speaking with. And the last thing down here is that everyone has the right to be heard. And the true reality in accessibility is that there are always a lot of competing priorities. The cost and time is always a problem, no matter what product you work in, what industry you work in, and not everybody wants to listen to you. That doesn't mean that you don't have the right to be heard, but I kind of want to let you know that it's okay to not win all the time, right? You're making your effort to have your priorities, your data heard. And it does take a lot of patience and a lot of time and a lot of repeating yourself. But the more that you face these conversations in a positive manner, with clear data, with information on what can be done to make things better, we're all going to eventually succeed, right? Like if you move one stone at a time, eventually you're going to turn around and see that you've made a pretty big pile, even though you have a daunting mountain still in front of you, right? So one of the things I want to let you guys know is don't give up, right? Keep going, keep having these conversations, and keep thinking of ways to take those conversations and relate them to people's everyday lives so that you can have that buy-in you're looking for. Accessibility can be hard. We are a great community. We're here for everybody's support. And, when you're thinking about ways to prioritize these conversations, keep it simple, make it personal, and lead with empathy. From a presentation standpoint, that is all I have. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Marky, if you want to jump back in. I don't know if you guys have questions or anything. Oh, Marky, I lost your audio.
I turn off the mic whenever I'm sitting in the background because, I jibber jabber to my dog while I'm watching. So let's see. So far, we have a couple questions. The first question, and I'm not sure if April's going to put it on the board there. What would you say to someone who wants accessibility to be a checklist with an end completion date? Oh, look at that. It's on the thing there.
That is a great question. And the reality is that accessibility is not a checklist, and it will not necessarily ever be done. That said, you can work and strategize on a way to find a place of completion. And what I mean by that, let's take the example of everybody's at a different place within their accessibility journey. So you might be working in companies where you have older products that you're working on right now, and you're thinking about your new stuff, right? Where do you want to put your investment, right? You definitely want to make sure the stuff that you're not even thinking about is going to be born accessible, built with accessibility from the beginning. It's also really important to pull that accessibility into the work you're doing right now, which is going to maybe take some rearranging of priorities and putting that information in there. For your older stuff, maybe there's a level of, this is as good as it's going to be, acknowledge what those gaps might be, but with the conversation of accessibility, we didn't build these to be accessible 35, 40 years ago. So we want to just say, this is where we are now because we are building all this cool new stuff for you. From a checklist perspective, it's not so simple. It's not just, yep, I was able to do this and I'm done with this today. It's really about changing how you build things, and it takes time to make that shift from just making sure I filled out a report at the end or I did an audit versus it is part of my everyday work, and everybody has this responsibility as we're going along to embed accessibility as we go.
Yeah, we have a launch checklist, and part of that is an accessibility checklist. And I put in a PR where the last thing on the accessibility checklist was, great, clear everything, do it again.
I like that. Yeah.
All right. So our next question is, what has been one of your favorite accessibility wins on a project?
That is a really good question. On a specific project, I don't know that I have one, but I have worked with clients who just kind of have started with a big shrug. Like, we know accessibility is important, but what does that mean? And how do I fix it? How do I put it into my checklist, right? So through those conversations and through collaboration and teamwork and understanding, what are I'm going to use the term low hanging fruit that could be fixed. Maybe it's adding alt text to all of the images. You've improved an experience a little bit. So what are the next little steps you can do? And by the end of the work with that company, we've been able to see growth in what their program looks like, and everybody from starting to talk about designs and what we want to build in to those final deliverables, and the QA team have really been understanding what they need to be looking for accessibility. And instead of saying, not it's somebody else's, they accept that it's part of the work that they're doing. And being able to see that evolution over time has been really gratifying.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Next question. So from Nora Medlin, one agency I work with got stuck with adoption because of the struggles with industry certification. How important is industry certification for an agency?
So with industry certification, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking about, Nora, as far as, are you talking about the requirement to provide the accessibility conformance report, those VPATs, those information of the accessibility of a product or program, or are you talking about the types of industry certifications on accessibility and what that means?
I'm not sure. I don't have the YouTube chat open, so oh wait, let me see the comments. There is a little thing in there. So yeah, Nora, if you could answer in there, I can actually see there. I do believe she's talking about certifications, so you can get the alphabet soup after your name, the IACP and whatnot. But maybe that's something different. But maybe that's what she's talking about, is how important are personal industry certifications for your agency.
Yeah, I think it depends, which is my favorite phrase in accessibility, by the way. The alphabet soup is great. As I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, when I actually learned and have retained a lot more from the studying and the preparation I was doing for that web accessibility specialist exam than if I were to go and complete and have additional soup letters after my name. I think as far as how does that help you personally, it's really up to what your personal goals are in your career. I don't think it's necessary. I think everybody has different reasons behind, why they do or do not want to get those certifications. I think what's most important is your ability to be knowledgeable on accessibility when you're talking about it in the different realms, as well as your involvement in the community and what you're learning and how you continue to grow. That's way more important than any letters after your name.
Yeah, and she does clarify industry accessibility search for individuals and orgs is what she's talking about. And yeah, I think that the great thing about the certifications is you learn the stuff, and I like reading the material. I don't like testing because I'm horrible at testing. So I usually do not go for certifications because it stresses me out too much. So but she's also asking in reference to agency / employer adoption. Do you think you should make as an agency, should your agency kind of say, go do that?
I don't think so. I think, you can definitely make a business case to your employer or whatever and say, this is why it's important. It really depends on a lot of different things, but I don't think that there should be a requirement. I think it really should be up to an individual. And again, what your goals are, I don't think that it should be a requirement.
Okay, next question. Do you have effective strategies to get buy-in from senior leadership on the importance of accessibility?
So I hope I went through some ideas, but I think what I have experienced with getting senior leadership is what do we have to lose from a revenue perspective, right? Like if we don't invest in accessibility, then we risk losing a 20 million, $200 million, whatever million or pennies, whatever the sale is, right? Business leaders, executive senior leaderships tend to look at the bottom line, right? That's their job. So if you can tie what your risk is when you're not accessible, you risk losing an adoption for a product, you risk losing a huge contract, a renewal contract, right? And if you don't take steps to fix it now, then you will not make that money later.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things. I mean, you got to tie it into what they care about. Unfortunately, you know. All right, next question. I found from Ashok, I found many times that there are many issues that we consider as WCAG failure, but when the actual native user tests of that component, they feel it's correct. How can we handle such situations?
That is a great question, Ashok. And, accessibility is not just the standards. It is a combination of the standards and usability and user experience and all of the different factors, right? The WCAG guidelines are out there as a guide, and they're awesome and they're amazing. And there are often times where you're like, but what about this, right? And the way that if you're not a native user, you might build something or you might be intending to use something in one way, but a native user of assistive technology might be like, no, this is the way I'm going to use it. So I would say in those instances, user research is super important when we're talking about accessibility, and really listening to the people who have the lived experiences and taking what they're saying into consideration. And then if it's an instance where it's like, well, the standard says this and this says that, then have a conversation, right? Whether it's something that you're working on in-house, or if you're working with a client, take all of that information forward and say, this is where we are. How should we best implement this? And, as long as you're not in true violation of the standard, and there might be another way to do it through an assistive technologies, then I think, considering different perspectives and doing that user research is a really important thing.
Yeah, and then, okay, we fixed it once. Now do it again. Do it again.
Yeah, clear and
start again. I like spending other people's money, so I don't have a problem saying, nope, let's do it again. So that's one way to look at it. Okay, what accessibility projects or websites have you seen that have delighted you, that you thought were really good?
That's a really great question. So there's actually an online therapy website that I've used called growtherapy.com. And that website has the most simple user interface that I have been to. It is not overwhelming. It is very clear. It's keyboard accessible. I've never personally used it with a screen reader, so I can't address how that works. But it's simple. And that's I actually made a comment to somebody about how awesome the website is, because I could just go and use it. And there was no extra thinking involved. And I'm seeing more of those as you go through, more apps that are coming out, but that's one that, is in recent memory that I've been thinking about.
Cool. And all right. So how do you follow, or what websites do you visit to stay on top of all the accessibility topics out there?
Great question. I used to be very involved in Twitter until it became not great. LinkedIn has become become really good. That's where I spend most of my time on the accessibility community. I was on Mastodon for a little bit, but I don't have that much time in my life. I have been fortunate to build up a great community and network of accessibility champions and advocates. So really staying in touch with them. I also find for news as exciting as it is, the U.S. government and the U.S. the Section 508 website, the ADA website, there's good stuff there. And there are some really good accessibility companies, like companies who focus only on accessibility. And I don't know if I should be naming names, but I'm going to anyway. DQ is one that's great. Level Access is great. There are places where you can get information about what's happening in the community. But I have personally found that LinkedIn and the community within LinkedIn has been a really great place for me to stay on top of things.
Yeah. And ALI Talks.
And ALI Talks, you're right. That was unfair. There's with ALI Talks, everything's recorded and you can go back and watch previous presentations. There are also some really great meetup groups throughout the country. And I'm very US focused right now, but I'm sure they're international as well. Also IAAP, I subscribe to their weekly newsletter. Just to they do a great job of summarizing, what's happening in the news. So finding your resources and just having something where you can take a peek and then staying connected with your community.
Cool. Alrighty. Nora does have a comment in the chat that many clients have clear accessibility requirements and require them in contracts. However, in my experiences, agencies often modify contract obligations to best effort because there's no certification or liability, or because of liability insurance. I think that is definitely, if the client comes with a clear requirement, we should probably use them. Oh, okay. So she follows up with the question: Do these ALI or accessibility org partner with agencies to help satisfy contractual requirements?
They do, and there are a lot of other companies out there that would help you. I used to work for one, Magic EdTech. It's on my LinkedIn. They're another company that does that type of work. But from being able to share that information, there is a standard within the international community. It's called the VPAT. You might have heard me refer to it earlier. And I often talked about VPATs and as report cards. But if there is a contractual obligation and you want to be showing people what your product looks like in alignment to accessibility, I do recommend that you consider having conversations around having an audit done or having an assessment done of your product and filling out that product. Even if somebody is not requiring it in a contract, having that type of a report, that accessibility conformance report, is almost a proactive move on your part in that case, because then you're already saying, here, we know where we are on accessibility and what our roadmap is to fix it. You don't have to wait for it to be asked for in a contract in order for you to do that and have that information in hand.
Alrighty. All right. Well, that wraps up our questions.
There's a question. What's VPAT? Okay, so a VPAT is short for Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. It is, I like to refer to it as a report card. It is literally a template. If you go into the itic.org, you can download their Word documents. You can download them, but they list out each of the WCAG standards. They give you an option, a column for conformance, and then a column for remarks. There's a lot of data around VPATs and ACRs, and we do only have 10 minutes, and I wasn't prepared for that today. But I will say that they are not good or bad. They are reporting of data of accessibility in a standardized way that is accepted internationally. So you can give a snapshot in time look at your product's accessibility conformance. And then it also gives you an opportunity to call out, hey, we have a bug here, we have a blocker here. And then you can talk through, and companies tend to use ACRs, which are the full reports, as part of their contractual agreements, their checklist items when they're saying, yep, we got a VPAT. They may not look at it, but it's really just a way for you as a company to share information on your accessibility status.
And well, one, there's a link in the chat that we posted at section508.gov that has more information on VPAT. But also, I like to think that people look at these as progress reports, not necessarily report cards. Like, here's where we were here, and then the next one we got a little bit better, and then the next one we got a little bit better. Progress reports. So there you go. We have one last question. That's, what is an ACR?
Yep. So an ACR is short for an accessibility conformance report. An ACR combines a bunch of information about your product, about what testing methods were used, what was tested, its product information. It includes that VPAT, that template, and then it typically has some other legalese at the bottom. Sometimes you might hear those two terms used interchangeably. At the end of the day, the ACR is the full kit and caboodle, and the VPAT is just the standardized template within that you fill out. And as it's all filled out, it becomes that report, that ACR.
Great. Thank you, Adrian, for that question. Acronyms are so much fun.
We used to call it popcorn at one of my old companies, right? We'd be like, popcorn, what does that mean? Tell us.
Yeah. No, one of our clients actually has an entire website dedicated to all their acronyms.
That's awesome.
And that's all that website is the
acronym.com. I love it.
So, all righty. Well, thank you very much, Aaron.
You're not the only one who does it, so don't worry.
Thank you for coming on and answering the questions and letting us know all this information. Hopefully we'll see you soon at a local meetup or conference in sunny Florida.
Sounds great. Thank you all.
All righty. For our next talk, next month, we have Open Source Accessibility Now with Blake Berticelli. Mark your calendars. That's going to happen on May 15th at noon Eastern time. And to get more information on that, you go to accessibilitytalks.com. That's A11YTALKS.com, which we have just converted from Gatsby to Drupal for those of you who care about that stuff. So I was very happy about that. We're always looking for speakers, new voices in the accessibility community. We make a conscious effort to include marginalized groups in tech in our speaker lineup. If you're interested, please reach out. team@alleytalks.com. That's team@alleytalks.com. Or you can go to alleytalks.com and /speakers. For those of you speaking of alphabet soup, with IAAP certifications, Alley Talks speakers and attendees all receive professional development credits through IAAP for your continuing education. And if you have any other ideas for how to make Alley Talks be better and more friendly to all, we would love to hear them. We always love to hear some great feedback. If you want to follow or subscribe us, we have all the different things. We have Twitter/X, whatever it's called, at Alley Talks. We're on @Alley Talks at Mastodon Social. And of course, you're here on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Click that subscribe and let us know that you're here. And thank you very much for attending. And if you have any other questions, let us know wherever you can. And thanks for playing.